We begin with day 2 of the federal cabinet retreat in Hamilton. The economy was the main topic of conversation today as the cabinet was briefed by 3 economic experts. Matt Ingram, basically an expert. He's live at Hamilton Convention Center. He's been there all day. Joins us with more. Matt?
Phil, that presentation from those experts took up a lot of the morning meeting of cabinet. They were discussing, obviously, the presentation. One of the ministers telling me that discussion continued into the lunch hour. Now, that presentation, a bit dire, warning Canadians to expect tough economic times in the months ahead.
We can expect the economy to slow significantly. We can expect that the unemployment rate will rise.
Former Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada, Carolyn Wilkin, along with 2 other economists, delivered their assessment to Cabinet, saying a slow patch is coming.
I think all policymakers should keep that in mind, whether that's making sure that the employment insurance system is ready, whether that's thinking about another round of income transfers to lower income folks.
Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, who is preparing the next federal budget for the spring, took questions after the presentation, saying high levels of global economic uncertainty must be considered as the feds lay out their plan and policies to navigate the downturn.
And that means that we do need to continue to take a fiscally prudent approach. We do not know for sure how the COVID recession is going to finally play out.
Canadians are facing rising inflation, record food prices, and increasing interest rates, leaving many struggling to get by. This retreat is aimed at addressing the tough economic times, working out policies for the feds to pursue in the coming months.
I think that the economic growth part is really important.
Hamilton native and Minister of Economic Development for Southern Ontario, Philomena Tassi, says economic investment from the feds will ultimately help tackle the affordability crisis.
So people have good paying jobs so that the affordability piece becomes better or easily addressed.
She also says the government wants to make sure people have the supports they need to weather the storm.
We know that Canadians are struggling. We know this issue is top of mind.
Tassi was part of a morning meeting between the Prime Minister and Hamilton Mayor Andrea Horwath.
Well, we're going to have a couple of conversations about some of Hamilton's needs.
And housing was on the top of her list.
A readout from the Prime Minister's office says that Horwath emphasized the need for affordable housing to be built along the forthcoming LRT line. Now, on that affordability note, I should mention that tomorrow the Bank of Canada is expected to announce another hike in its interest rate. It's been doing that several times. Oh, I think this will be the 8th time, actually, if they do go ahead and do it tomorrow, as they try and tackle inflation, which, as we all know, has gotten out of control here in this country. Now, I want to bring in Jason Gaidola. He's been covering the cabinet retreat with me. Jason, you took a bit of a different angle today. What were you covering?
Absolutely, Matt. As the Trudeau government continues to strategize the economic outlook, a local NDP, Matthew Green, says that he hopes the Trudeau government keeps in mind of Canadians and Hamiltonians who are in need in areas such as healthcare and housing. However, in the meantime, another local MP and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's inner circle had some positive news this afternoon, saying the backlog in passports is clear.
After dedicating resources to ensure these Canadians receive their passports, approximately 98% of the backlog of applications have been processed.
Social Development Minister Karina Gould says the heap of pending passports for Canadians has been virtually eliminated following talks in Hamilton this morning.
What I would say is that in the past year, we have moved heaven and earth to make sure that this system is working for Canadians.
Demand for passports dropped during the pandemic, but then surged after restrictions were lifted and travel increased. This past October, most new applications were being processed on time, but thousands who applied before then faced excessive delays.
We're on track to deliver just over 3, maybe 3.5 million passports by the end of this fiscal year. That's well over double what we would have done in the previous year.
Gould says nearly a year ago, the government doubled the amount of employees, but adds that the jump in labor is still within its fiscal framework. That framework is one of the main topics being discussed during the meetings here in Hamilton.
It's certainly a resilient city, and when they come here, my hope is that they get a chance to see what some of the social impacts are.
Matthew Green, the MP for Hamilton Centre, issued an open letter to the Prime Minister and his inner circle about their objectives, urging them to include Hamiltonians and Canadians who are waiting on disability benefits. Also, conditional investments to provincial health care and national action on housing.
Have to look to our skyline to see all the cranes dotting the sky, while simultaneously, just a few hundred meters from here, we have people living in tents. We're calling on them to have bold strategies to build housing across the country and decommodify it and take it out of the hands of big banks and Bay Street and give it back to the general public.
Matthew Green also mentioned that he hopes the Trudeau government remains committed when it comes to the confidence and supply agreement both parties are in at this point of time. He also mentioned that he hopes that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau remains tough on the premiers when it comes to the healthcare deal.
Yeah, and speaking of that deal, we are expecting to hear more about an agreement between the provinces and the feds to increase the Canada Health Transfer. That's the payments from the federal government that goes out to the provinces to support their healthcare systems. Now, we haven't heard any updates today, but last night, Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos gave a late-night press gathering where he mentioned that there is goodwill, a lot of goodwill and progress being made as the two sides try to hammer out a deal. It is possible that we could hear more details about this before the end of the cabinet retreat, which is set to wrap up tomorrow. Now, stick around. Later in the show, I'll have an important update from the transport minister, him telling reporters today at this cabinet retreat that there are going to be big changes to the passenger Bill of Rights for airline travelers coming up later in the spring. Stick around. I'll have that later.